Hi, AT from CNC at Home. I got a large package today from SainSmart. So this video is going to kind of be a box opening thing, assembly. Let's just get to the chase. Let's take a look. Alright, what we have here is a package from SainSmart. Long story short, they've sent me a new laser. How cool is that? So, we're going to do a little bit of unboxing and then we'll do a nice detailed assembly on this so we can see how this goes together. So, the one tool that you will need is a knife. Everything else you need to build the SainSmart Genmitsu LE5040 is in the box. There will be a few other things that make it go a little easier, but everything you really need is in the box. So let's get this open. There we go. Now inside the box, nicely packed. One of the most important things we need is the user's manual. Now this will go through and it has a list of components, everything that we need, and step-by-step instructions on how to get this thing put together. The rest of this should be pretty straightforward. We have our controller board, power supply, some twist ties. And this is really cool. Here's a thumb drive that has the drivers and some sample cuts and stuff on here, and some software. So that's kind of a cool way to get that. USB cable that goes with the controller. What else do we have here? Oh, the other half of the power supply. This is the part that plugs in. Now there are two plugs here. So there's our standard. We'll open this up. For the United States of America, we have our standard household 120 volt outlet. It also comes with a cord for some of the European ones, which I believe are then 240. So, cool. Alright, we've got some acrylic pieces. Those go into making what we need. Here we have laser, and it looks like the laser controller is in here as well. Okay. So that's nicely packed. We have a nice set of green goggles. Here we have some cable wrap. This will help us control all the wires and cabling when we get that in place. Big bag of nuts and bolts. Couple brackets, that's for the drag chain, okay, which comes with this, so those attach to that. Two stepper motors. That one works well, seems to. That one spins well. So here we have all the cabling, harnesses, and the belts. So that can go with the big bag of nuts and bolts. And then we have some rails. These could use a little cleanup. They still have some burrs on here from manufacturing, a little bit of grease or oil on them. Again, from the manufacturing process, not that big of a deal. These actually come with a protective coating on it. Cross members, and here's our other. So this will end up being, this is our y-axis, and then the x-axis gantry runs across on that. One more piece here, and then we have our drive shaft. This connects our two synchronization gears, so when it's moving in the y-axis, it moves parallel to the frame. That looks like it. So I will get this stuff set aside. I'll get this bag opened up, get this organized so we can get at the parts easily. The same with this bag. I'll get these pieces of acrylic organized and get those ready. And then we can do the assembly. Sounds good.
The first thing you want to do is grab the manual. This has a list of all of the components that you'll need and a nice set of instructions on how to put it all together. You should review this entire manual before you start doing the assembly. It's important to do an inventory of all of your components to make sure you have everything. The red cable, which is used to control the laser, has two. There's a short one and a long one. The short one comes with the laser assembly itself. The long one comes with the LE45 kit. The long one is the one you want. That short one, you just don't need it. You will also have two stepper motor cables, a long one and a short one. The short one ends up being for our Y-axis stepper motor. The long one is for the X-axis stepper motor. There are several pieces of acrylic. Every single one has paper on both sides to keep it clean and unscratched. Now that we're doing the assembly, all of this paper needs to be removed. Here are the 3 Allen wrenches that come with the kit. This is basically all you need to assemble the project. You might want to have a metric straight edge so you can measure the length of the bolts and the columns, the nylon columns, to make sure that you're using the correct ones. I went through and labeled the bags so that each one of them had the size listed right on it for easy identification later on. You want to have a roll of cellophane tape for later on. Tape measure will also come in handy for squaring up our base. And some sort of thin, flexible rod will come in handy for fishing our cables through the drag chain. Our first step on page 7 is assembling the base. We'll need 4 M520 bolts for this. We'll also need some aluminum profile, our 480mm and our 530mm. There should be 2 of each. The M5 bolts which screw this together use the largest of the 3 Allen wrenches. On these side channels, you'll notice a hole on the top. Make sure that is up. If you have it down, you'll be building this upside down, which you can do, but it's easier to keep it right side up. Push the M5 bolt through the hole and then thread it into the other channel. This will be done on all 4 corners. Tighten them up with the Allen wrench. Using the tape measure, I do a diagonal measurement on both diagonals. If they're exactly the same, we know our base is square. This one was just slightly off. I did some measurements, a little tweak, got it nice and square. I also took this over to a very flat surface to make sure that it is flat, and it was. Our next step is the right bracket assembly. For this, we'll need our acrylic sheet A. We'll need our Y-stepper motor and the coupling. We'll need 4 M325s and M316 nylon columns. Using the medium-sized Allen wrench for these M3s, let's get this assembled. The first step is to place the coupling onto the stepper motor itself. It's a little bit of a tight fit, so you need to give it a squeeze. Once it's on, Take the smallest of the Allen wrenches and tighten up the 2 set screws closest to the stepper motor. Now it's time to put the stepper motor onto our acrylic sheet. Place the bolts through the acrylic sheet, add the columns, and then position the stepper motor. Notice the location of the plug for the stepper motors to the side. This will aid in our cabling later on. Tighten up the bolts, and this step is done. The next step is installing our 4 groove bearings. For this, we'll need our right bracket assembly. We'll need 4 M57 columns, we'll need hex nuts, we'll need groove bearings, and we'll need the M5 bolts. First thing we do is we run a bolt through. Then we'll put a column on. We'll tighten that down with a hex nut. This connection can be nice and firm, so use the Allen wrench, get it nice and tight. Then put on one of the V-groove bearings and another hex nut. This one you'll want to do hand tight and make sure the bearing moves smoothly. If you get this too tight, you can impede its movement. Now repeat this process for the other 3 V-groove bearings. Now we move on to the left bracket assembly. It's basically the same as what we just did, just on another piece. So we use our nylon columns, 4 bolts, 8 hex nuts, and our 4 V-groove bearings. This uses acrylic sheet B. So again, place the bolt through, then the column, then a nut, and get it nice and tight. Then put on the V bearing, and then finally the last hex nut. Once it's assembled, make sure that all 4 of the bearings move smoothly. If they don't, loosen up the nut. The next step is the laser module assembly. For this, you'll need 4 M3x8 bolts, you'll need the laser module itself, and you'll need acrylic sheet C. This step is relatively easy. All you do is place these 4 bolts through the holes in the acrylic sheet and into the laser head itself. Then tighten them down with an Allen wrench. Our next step is assembling the X-axis stepper motor. For this, we'll need 4 M3 bolts, synchronous wheel, our stepper motor itself, and acrylic sheet D. We simply put our 4 bolts through the acrylic sheet and into the stepper motor and secure it down. That is, if you can hang on to these little bolts. Place the plug to your right. This again will aid in wiring this later. The last step is to secure the synchronous wheel. Don't put it on very tight because we'll need to adjust this later, so just do it tightly enough to hold it in place. Now we assemble our X gantry. For this, we'll need some M5 columns and bolts. We'll also need some hex nuts and some gaskets, our stepper assembly, and our laser module. One thing to note on our instructions is that it shows the gasket going on first over the bolt. And that's not correct. The first thing we want to do is put our M510 nylon column on and then put the gasket on. So it's just backwards in the picture. So first the column, then the gasket. Once the gasket's on, then we slip on one of our V-bearings, another gasket, another column, and then we repeat that on the other 4 or the other 3 bolts. Make sure that these V-bearings move smoothly. If they do, you've tightened something a little too tight. Something is missing in the instructions, and that's actually the attachment of the laser control module itself. This is done at this time, and it's a simple matter of using 2 self-tapping screws and putting it on our X-axis gantry. It's just not in the manual. So we need our 2 M38 self-tapping screws, our X gantry laser thingy, and the laser control itself. It's a lot easier to work with if you unplug the wires. There are 2 holes in the module itself, and they should line up with the 2 holes in the acrylic sheet. We just place the self-tapping screws in each one and tighten them down. Make sure that the module is tight. We can now run the wires from the laser itself through the 2 oblong holes in the acrylic. That way we can easily plug them into our controller and they'll stay out of the way. The white plug goes into the white socket and the yellow plug goes into the yellow socket. Now we're all set. The laser controller itself can be placed either orientation. It really doesn't make a difference. It's up to you. Now we're going to finish the X-axis gantry and add on the Y-axis stepper motor. We'll need all these major components along with some nuts, synchronous gears. It all goes together. First thing is to actually take the X-axis laser gantry and slide it into the chunk of aluminum. It's a lot easier to do when you're not trying to videotape this. Now we'll press our bearing into the hole on our left side. Should go in nice and easily. We'll slide our synchronous gears onto our linear axis shaft. This second one I'm actually putting on backwards. I caught this later and have it reversed. They should both face the same direction so they don't interfere with the stepper motor itself. Not a major thing to correct if you don't get it in there correctly. We'll put on our 3mm nylon column. With 2 bolts, we just attach this left side onto the Y gantry. We'll slide our linear rod through the bearing and push it through further than it needs to so it's not in the way of attaching the other side. This side is also attached with 2 M5 bolts. Once it's set on, then we can take our linear axis and attach it. Make sure it's into our coupling nice and firm, and secure this one tightly, as we shouldn't need to adjust this particular connection later on. The 2 synchronous gears can just be left free to float, as we'll need to adjust those later once the belts are put on. Now let's assemble this onto our base. We need the gantry bracket and the base frame. Again, this step goes much quicker if you're not trying to hold it in frame of the camera. This whole gantry assembly slides on easily to the base frame. That's all there is to it, and everything moves nice and smoothly. Now we put on our feet. There's 4 of these. The process is the same for each one. Each foot needs 3 bolts and 1 T-nut to attach. I'm going to try to get this positioned so you can see how this goes on. The first thing I do is put one of the bolts through and attach the T-nut. The T-nut is a really cool invention. It just slides into the channel itself, and as you tighten it, it turns and it tightens up. Whoever invented that was kind of clever. So we just run the bolt through the plastic leg, attach the T-nut, and slide it into the channel and tighten it down. Then we add our 2 other bolts and get those tightened down. We repeat this step on all the other corners. This is a good time to make sure everything is moving smoothly. Next, we're going to put together our controller board. We'll need some bolts and some copper columns. We'll need the controller board. We'll need the clear acrylic sheet F. And it's a good idea to have some fancy washers. These are not included in the kit. Let's take a look at why we need these fancy washers. If we were to assemble this as the instructions show, we put one of the copper columns on and we put the board on, and there's just a little gap in there. So to fill up the gap, we use one of these fancy washers. So let's take this back apart and reassemble it using the fancy washer, and we'll see how the controller board fits nice and snugly. Now that's nice and solid. This will hold up well under use. Now we're going to attach our controller onto the frame itself. This uses two M510 bolts and two T-nuts. With all the plugs facing up, put two bolts on with two T-nuts, slide it into the channel, and tighten it down. That's all there is to it. Now we install our Y-axis timing belts. We'll need our M38 bolts and matching square nuts, that isn't their real size, and we need the LE5040 timing belts, two of those, one for each side. We're going to slide the timing belts underneath one of the V-bearings and into the channel. Then we'll do that to the other side, and then we can slide the synchronous gear into position. We still don't tighten the synchronous gear down quite yet. We'll get the belt tightened down first, then we can secure the synchronous gear. Using these square nuts to attach the belt is a little bit tricky. It's not as easy as using the T-nuts as we have in other steps. It's a similar kind of thing, it just doesn't work quite as well. So first we thread one of the square nuts onto a bolt, and then we get it down into the channel. I use one of the Allen wrenches to get it turned a little bit sideways and push tightly into position. Then I'll tighten it down. Here's what it looks like close up. You can see how that's cammed to the side, and it holds well. Now we do the same thing to the other end of the belt. You want to make sure the belt is pulled tightly, but not too tightly. Kind of a fine line between loose and tight. You'll get it once it's on. Now we do the same process to the other side. Once the belts are in place, you'll notice that the gantry is a little stiffer in its movement. This is expected as it's now driving the stepper motor. Make sure that it does move freely. Next, you'll want to measure to ensure that the gantry is perpendicular to the rest of the base, and then tighten down your synchronous gears. The next step is to put on the X-axis timing belt. We'll need 2 more M3 bolts and matching square nuts, and the L630 timing belt. The process for this assembly is basically what we did on the Y-axis. We thread the belt underneath the V bearing on both sides and over the synchronous gear. Make sure that the synchronous gear is loose because we'll need to align that with the belt once it's fastened. We secure the ends with our bolts and square nuts just like we did with the Y-axis, making sure that the belt is tight but not too tight. Now we can screw down our synchronous gear once it's aligned with the belt. There are 2 set screws. Make sure that you tighten both of them. Our next step is to install the drag chain and get our wiring in place from the gantry back to the controller. We'll need our drag chain, our 2 stepper motor cables, and our laser control cable. I'm going to take a little time here to label these stepper controller cables, one with X and one with Y. The short one is the Y, the long one is the X. That way there's no confusion later on. You'll notice that the end doesn't fit into the drag chain. This is the fat end that plugs into the stepper motor. The skinny end, which plugs into the controller, also doesn't fit. So how are we supposed to get this through? Well, we take the wide end and we bend it back at a 90 against itself. This makes it thinner, and it'll fit into the drag chain easily. The problem is it doesn't want to stay in place folded over like that. This is where our cellophane tape comes in. Just pull off a piece of cellophane tape, wrap it around once you have the plug folded over. This will hold it in place and it'll pull through nicely. Do this to the other cable as well. The red cable for the laser fits without all of this. Now, here's one little trick that'll save you some time. Remember that flexible rod I talked about? This is where it comes into play. We tape all the cables together onto the end of the flexible rod. Then the rod goes through the drag chain. Once that's done, we can pull all the wires through easily. Otherwise, it's a painstaking process that you can do. It's just tedious and painstaking. This is real time. Watch how easy this is. You just grab the bar or the pole, and all the wires pull through nice and easily. The next step is to attach the drag chain to our base and to the gantry. To do that, we'll need some more square nuts and bolts. We'll need 2 self-tapping screws, and we'll need the 2 drag chain brackets. One thing that I've run into with these brackets is that the bolts don't fit through the holes very easily at all. I'm sure with a little elbow grease I could probably force them through. What I'm using is a reamer, and I'm just enlarging that hole just a little bit so that the bolt fits through nice and easily. Putting the square nuts on the back, aligning it up with the channel, then I can tighten that into place. I'm going to tape my wires out of the way so they're not bothering me when I'm doing this step. Using a square nut and one of the bolts, I screw that into place and make sure that that drag chain is as far away as you can get it. It needs all the clearance it can get. The next step again is to just tape these cables out of my way and then attach the other bracket. This is done with 2 of the square nuts and the bolts, and it attaches nice and easily. Then we'll use 2 of our self-tapping screws and screw that to the acrylic sheet. Here's what it looks like. Again, these holes need to be reamed out just a little bit so that we can get those screws to fit through. Now we screw this on and our drag chain is in place. Now we can start plugging some of these things in. Everything is obvious where it plugs into the control board. It's all color coded. Make sure there's enough slack so that the gantry can move all the way to the left or right. I'm marking on the controller which is X and which is Y and getting the appropriate cable plugged in. The next thing is to wrap all of these cables with the included cable wrap. This will keep everything nice and tidy. You don't want these cables to pinch. Here's what it looks like when it's done.
Well, that was a fun build. I kind of enjoyed building another one of these LE5040s. After you've gone through it once or twice, there's some little, tips and hints and whatnot, and it really does go together easy, even the first time I did it. So anyway, I really enjoyed myself doing that. Here's the final results. Let's take a look. Okay, I have this set up down in my little mini CNC shop down in the utility room. Got the laser all powered up here. The fans are spinning. It does seem to be quieter than the other one, just a little bit. But it did get a little louder once everything got spun up. So let's take a look and see if this thing actually works. Well, it seems to move nicely. Okay, let's just do a quick test burn right on the wasteboard, see how it goes.
Oops.
Hi, I'm AT from CNC at Home. If you like our content, help support our channel by clicking on subscribe and liking our videos. Thank you for watching this video. Have fun with your CNC at Home projects.